my biggest concern is what happens if the people who control this money, which I refer to as dark money, what happens if they get itchy trigger fingers or think that the dollar might possibly collapse? What are they likely to do with that 21 trillion? Do you think they might want to buy some gold? Might they want to buy some Bitcoin?
Are you tired of overpaying for your gold, silver, and platinum bullion coins and bars? Then visit sdbullion.com today. SD Bullion was recently named the 177th fastest growing company in the United States by Inc. magazine. This is because they offer the absolute lowest prices in the industry and follow up with over-the-top customer service. So what are you waiting for? Go to sdbullion.com today and join more than 60,000 happy investors that save money on every precious metals purchase they make.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah Johnson with SilverDoctors.com, and back with us today is Rob Kirby from Kirby Analytics. Rob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure to be with you again, Elijah.
All right, now I'd first like to discuss the $21 trillion that is missing from mostly the Department of Defense and some only half a billion, not only half a trillion, only half a trillion is missing from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, so only 500 billion, not a lot, out of the 21 trillion that's missing in total. Oh, can you just give us some more information on this topic? What the heck is happening here?
Well, what we're referencing here, Elijah, is work that was done by a PhD economist at Michigan State University, Dr. Mark Skidmore, and his team of intrepid investigators, in conjunction with the work of Catherine Austin Fitts, who's former Undersecretary of HUD, Housing and Urban Development, in the Bush 1 administration. And what they have managed to do, combing through government books, they have discerned that there's $21 trillion worth of undocumented or unaccounted for expenses by predominantly DOD and HUD. And so these people's credentials are beyond reproach. And they've done the homework and going through publicly available government data, and the money is unaccounted for and missing. And this is money that is without a doubt existed. So my question is, where has this money gone? Who is in control of it? And the fact that $21 trillion of money that is basically not acknowledged to exist, the fact that we know it exists, what does that do to monetary aggregates as published by the Federal Reserve when they reference things like M1, M2, and M3? Because if you add another $21 trillion worth into any of those numbers, it makes a sham of reporting that's done by the Fed, that's done by the Treasury. And my question is, like, where is this money? Who has it? And I guess really probably my biggest concern is what happens if the people who control this money, which I refer to as dark money, what happens if they get itchy trigger fingers or think that the dollar might possibly collapse? What are they likely to do with that 21 trillion? Do you think they might want to buy some gold? Might they want to buy some Bitcoin? Might they want to buy a host of other things? Anyway, these are questions that I have, very real questions, and I want to point out one thing, just on the tail end of this. This has been there's been quite a to do about this revelation and acknowledgement that 21 trillion is missing. And I did receive, by the way, an email from Dr. Mark Skidmore. I've corresponded with him a few times in the past. And I received an email from him last night, and he told me that all the publicly available government documentation and data, where he mined this rather breathtaking report from, has now been basically taken offline by the government. So they certainly seemingly don't want other people digging in and doing more work and possibly creating more difficulty for let's just say, the powers that be. But these are very serious allegations. The evidence that's been put forward is, it's real. So, big questions need to be answered. And, this is something that instead of having special investigators being hired to look into wet dreams about Donald Trump and whether he spoke with somebody who speaks in Russian, maybe these clowns should be investigating where $21 trillion has gone because it is missing.
Right, and what I don't understand is, how do you lose track of $21 trillion? I mean, I understand, like, maybe $100, $1,000, maybe even $1 million, but like 21 trillion, how do you lose track of that much money?
Very good question, Elijah, and I'm just incapable of giving you the answer.
So can you expand, like, on how, as you were talking about, how this could impact the monetary aggregates, that the Fed puts out? Because what you're saying is then maybe what the Fed is putting out is just a complete lie.
Well, yeah, I'm suggesting that what is coming from officialdom is a complete lie. We know that officialdom lies to us. I mean, if we want proof of how officialdom lies to us, all we need to do is review the recently released data dump on the JFK assassination. We know that was an inside job, and we know that it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald acting alone. We know that we were lied to about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction, and Iraq was invaded. We are lied to wholesale by officialdom on so many different topics. What would be very strange would actually, if we were actually told something by officialdom that was the truth. So when people get off on saying, how can you say that that these things, or how can you make statements that officialdom is lying to us? Because they lie to us as a matter of fact, and on everything, and particularly on financial data, because we know that they over-report the employment situation. Like we're told that there's record low unemployment rate, yet the number of people that are out of work in America has never been higher. So that's data manipulation. We're told that inflation is at 2%, but we have alternative methods that say it's probably more like 8 to 10%. And there I'm just sort of referencing the work of John Williams of shadowstats.com. Anybody can Google his name or go to shadowstats.com and look and see for themselves how government, in today's world is misreporting inflation data, employment data. And so monetary aggregate data, how can this be relevant if there's $21 trillion worth of undocumented money that exists out there somewhere that somebody or some entity has access to? And this basically, I'm going to suggest, is probably much of this money is probably housed in dark pools of institutions like the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which I refer to as a black hole. It's a secret slush fund from an obscure arm of the U.S. Treasury, where dark money is housed. And I've ascertained for a number of years, or made the claim for a number of years, that I believe that the exchange stabilization fund could house tens of trillions of US dollars in dark money. Well, lo and behold, and I've had a number of people scoff at me when I make those claims, but lo and behold, we have $21 trillion of missing money. And I mean, the notion that trillions could be sitting in a dark slush fund like the ESF it gains an awful lot of credibility when very credible people have done the investigative work to show that this money is missing in action. So where is it? Who's got control of it? And what are they doing with it? And what might they do with it in the future? These are all valid questions.
Definitely. And I mean, I don't know how to answer those questions, and I think it's really interesting just to bring up the topic, where is this money? And just to think about these questions, because it's like 21 trillion, like we were talking about at the beginning, it's not something you just lose. I mean, this is ridiculous. But I would like to get to some viewers' questions now. And one of the viewers' questions is about cryptocurrencies, and they want to know, this is from Jeffrey Morris, and he's wanting to know, to what extent does the rise of cryptocurrencies present problems, if any, for central banks in the longer term? If they do, what might the response be of the Bank of International Settlements?
Well, I'm going to answer that by saying I view the rise of the cryptocurrencies as a vote of non-confidence in fiat money and in the US dollar specifically. So if does this present a problem for the world's central bankers? Yes, it does, because their stock in trade, which is fiat money, is, at least in my mind, being soundly rejected globally with the rise of the cryptocurrencies. So I view the move to cryptos as an anti-dollar trade, and people seem to just not be able to get enough of the cryptos right now. And I think the reason why that's occurring is because gold and silver, the traditional go-to alternatives to failing fiat money, they have been suppressed to the point where their prices are nailed to the floor through suppressive price management by, at least in my view, it's the U.S. Treasury, the U.S. government acting through the Federal Reserve that has kept the rise in precious metals prices from becoming, let's just say, a bothersome thing. And do note that as we see people try to move into the metals, we see the trading volumes on these paper exchanges increase. We see open interest. Every time the price of gold or silver tries to break out and make new highs, we see new and historically extreme amounts of open interest being added to the tallies at the COMEX and the LBMA. And what they are doing is basically trying to quell the world's demand or thirst for precious metal. And at some point in the near future, I believe the world will come to realize that there's a difference between a paper ounce and a physical ounce, because these exchanges where these vast amounts of contracts, futures contracts, are traded, in the price discovery mechanisms that we currently have, the exchange doesn't differentiate between a physical ounce and a paper ounce. And as such, ounces that don't exist or will never exist are sold in futures form, which distorts the value of the real underlying physical commodity. And I do believe, and I'm quite certain, because I know people who are engaged in this pursuit, that ultimately precious metals will become cryptoized. We will see asset-backed cryptocurrencies, and by applying blockchain technology to physical assets, this will help in bringing transparency to price discovery in that if you have physical metals that are cryptoized, they cannot be sold because the blockchain would show this up for the fraud that it is. They cannot be sold many times over. So to put this in real layman's terms, we have exchanges like COMEX where they might have 10 ounces. Let's just say they have 10 ounces of metal in the warehouse, and for every 10 ounces they have in the warehouse, they would sell maybe 2,000 ounces of paper contracts against the 10 in the warehouse. So you've got these glaringly crazy amounts of leverage being applied to these futures games, and this creates distortions in legitimate price discovery, where the price being exhibited on the exchange for things like gold and silver have little bearing and little to do with the amount of gold and silver that actually gets mined out of the Earth's crust. And as these assets become cryptoized, the ability of exchanges to sell them over and over and over again will disappear or be diminished dramatically. So that's what I see coming. What I can see coming is more reliable price discovery, and that should create a very, very large upward bias to the price of physical metal.
Definitely. So basically what you're saying, if I'm hearing you right, is that if cryptocurrencies, if there are cryptocurrencies that are backed by gold or silver, then those currencies could, in a sense, be immune from manipulation, and possibly having gold or silver-backed cryptocurrencies could end the manipulation.
Yes. You see, let's just say I know there's a huge difference between people in the investment community and in the hedge fund community are basically told in today's world that if they want physical exposure to metal, they should buy an ETF like a GLD or an SLV. My contention for many years has been that GLD and SLV are frauds. The wording in their prospectuses is extremely ambiguous as to the warehousing and as to custody of the metal, and it's my belief that they don't really hold the physical metal that they claim to hold, and going forward, as precious metals become cryptoized, people who are seeking exposure to real physical metal will be able to achieve verifiable real stocks of physical metal, which will be extremely liquid and will be able to be traded or exchanged as rapidly as shares of GLD and SLV, except they will now come basically with an ironclad guarantee that the metal, when they're buying physical metal, that there really is physical metal there that they could, if they wished, take delivery of at any time. Big difference.
Definitely. Definitely. And I'd like to move now to this next viewer's question. This viewer is wanting to know about, how a lot of Eastern countries are accumulating gold and Western countries aren't. So if the first question is, do you see that, for example, China or other Eastern countries could introduce a gold-backed currency? And also, how do you think this imbalance of gold holdings will impact trade in the future?
Well, there's an old cliche that says the people with the gold make the rules. And let's just say China and countries in the East have been accumulating gold dramatically for the past 10 or 15, 20 years. And, I think most people can see it even through our rose-colored glasses that increasingly China is setting the rules or making the rules with regard to world trade. So, my answer to the question is yes. I see this continuing to occur. I mean, gold is flowing from west to east and has been for a very long time. America's ability to consume has all been predicated on the position of the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. Should anything happen to America's ability to have everything in the world settle in U.S. dollars, this could create a dramatic drop in standard of living in America, and it could really lessen America's position, leadership position in the world, because in my view, the dollar is vulnerable to losing its place as the world's reserve currency, without a doubt.
Now, moving to our last viewer's question. This viewer is wanting to know about hyperinflation in the U.S., why we haven't seen it yet, and what do you think could spark monetary velocity to increase so much that we would see hyperinflation?
Well, let's just say if the world suddenly became very, very informed that there's $21 trillion existing that formerly wasn't acknowledged to exist. I mean, if you woke up one day and you realized that, the monetary stock or the amount of money in existence that yesterday you believed was X, and if you wake up the next day and realize, well, that number you were given and you believed in yesterday of X is really 25X, it could certainly shape your willingness to either hold dollars, and it would very likely make you want to get rid of dollars that you have if you suddenly realize that the amount of them in existence is dramatically higher than what you previously thought. So, I guess really the adage is, does crime really pay? I mean, I think it has been paying for a long time, but crime, usually only pays until you get caught. And when you get caught, there are, maybe some unintended consequences that accrue to the people that have committed the Wookiee. So that's what I see coming.
Right, and actually, there was one other question I thought. I thought it was kind of a joke, but I think it actually kind of applies to this. Is they were wondering, how do you sleep at night? And maybe the answer to that would be, so how can people prepare so that they're not, worrying about their standard of living? If they're living in the United States, you're saying the standard of living is going to go way down. How do people prepare so that they can sleep at night?
Well, if you've got some food or some preparations put away, if you've got some physical metal hidden away, I don't see why you wouldn't sleep I don't see why anyone would sleep bad. I mean, if you've done what you can to protect yourself, you carry on. Life isn't going to stop unless people behave in an extremely reckless and dangerous manner. Commerce is never going to stop, even if the dollar collapses. Because if the dollar collapses, we'll be forced into, commerce will continue. It's just it'll carry on in a different form than we formerly were used to. So even if we get driven back to a system of barter, I mean, commerce doesn't stop. So, my attitude is, I want to make sure I still have some chips to continue playing the game. And, what more can anyone do? Make sure you have some chips to stay in the game. And that would generally mean, you got to have some food, you got to have some fungible currency in the event that the current currency system evaporates or goes down the drain. And then you might want to think about having a means to protect it all. So, it's what does they call it? Guns, grub, and a getaway plan or something like that. I don't know what else to recommend to anybody in terms of having a plan for survival.
All right. Well, Rob Kirby, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we let you go, did you want to share with the viewers any last thoughts you had and where they can find you online?
Well, I just would remind everybody to stay long in strong physical precious metal to the extent they can. Have some storable food put away, and think about if you don't, having a means to protect it all. Get to know people in your community and seek out like-minded people, and keep your chin up and and remain informed because things are changing. The pace of change is accelerating. Let's just put it that way.
All right. Once again, Rob Kirby, thank you so much for your insights today.
My pleasure being with you.